The grand funeral of Edward VII was a momentous event. Edward VII, who ascended to the throne after the death of his mother, Queen Victoria, in 1901, ruled for just over 9 years. When he assumed the throne, he was in his 60s and had held the title of Prince of Wales for a significant period of time. While he enjoyed public approval, his reputation as a playboy prince with a penchant for women strained his relationship with his mother. On the 6th of May 1910, King Edward VII passed away, marking the end of an era. His funeral became the largest gathering of the European royalty in history and the final reunion of many royal families before the outbreak of World War I. But what is the story behind King Edward VII's funeral? King Edward VII had a lifelong habit of consuming 20 cigarettes and 12 cigars daily. He had battled various health issues, including appendicitis in 1907, which is treated with radium. Towards the end of his life, bronchitis plagued him also, and during a state visit to Berlin in February 1909, he lost consciousness, and in March 1910, he collapsed again. He stayed on his trip to recover, and his deteriorating health went largely unreported. He eventually returned to Buckingham Palace, still suffering from bronchitis. On the 6th of May 1910, King Edward VII experienced a series of heart attacks. Despite his illness, he refused to retire to his bed, declaring his determination to continue working. However, he was clearly very ill and had intermittent moments of consciousness. His son, the future King George V, informed him of his horse's victory in a race that afternoon. The king replied, "Yes, I have heard of it. I'm very glad." These were his final words. At 11:30 p.m. he lost consciousness and passed away 15 minutes later. After his death, Queen Alexandra, his wife, insisted that Edward's body remain in place for 8 days. On the 11th of May, small groups of family members were granted the opportunity to view his body. The deceased king was dressed in his uniform and placed in a substantial oak coffin. Subsequently, the coffin was moved to the throne room at Buckingham Palace, where it was sealed before being put on display for public viewing in Westminster Hall on the 17th of May. This allowed the public to pay their respects to the late king. This marked the first time a member of the royal family would lay in state in the hall. A brief service occurred upon the arrival of the coffin, with choirs singing hymns and military bands in attendance. On the initial day of the lying in state, thousands of individuals braved the rain, and by 10 p.m. when the gates closed, 25,000 people had been turned away. On the 19th of May, Kaiser Wilhelm II of Germany expressed a desire for the hall to be closed while he laid a wreath. However, he was advised against it, as it might incite a riot. Instead, the emperor was discreetly ushered in through a separate entrance while the public filed past. It is estimated that approximately 500,000 people visited the hall during its 3-day opening. The state funeral occurred on the 20th of May, 2 weeks after Edward's passing. Enormous crowds, numbering between 3 to 5 million people, gathered to witness the procession, with 35,000 soldiers providing security along the route. The funeral procession proceeded from Buckingham Palace to Westminster Hall, where the small ceremony occurred. A select group of mourners, including King George V, the King's Queen, his daughters, brother, and nephew, attended the rest of the funeral service, while a multitude waited outside the hall to pay their respects. Big Ben tolled 68 times, signifying each year of Edward's life. This marked the first time the bell was employed in a monarch's funeral. The procession then moved from Westminster Hall through Whitehall and the Mall, from Hyde Park Corner to Marble Arch, and finally to Paddington Station. Representatives from 70 different states participated, and the funeral procession was followed by 11 carriages. The King's dogs led the way, and from Paddington Station the King's coffin was transported to Windsor. The royal train was employed for this purpose, and from the station the journey continued to Windsor Castle, where a comprehensive funeral ceremony unfolded in St. George's Chapel. The funeral service bore resemblance to that of Queen Victoria, but Edward VII's final resting place would be within the chapel itself. His body would be interred there. The ceremony followed the order of the burial of the dead from the Book of Common Prayer. Queen Alexandra requested a particular song, but she was advised to select something more fitting for the occasion. The royal household's funeral directors assisted with the proceedings, a role that they had previously fulfilled for King George III, King George IV, the Duke of Gloucester, the Duke of Wellington, Prince Albert, Prince Leopold, and Queen Victoria. Following the ceremony, King Edward VII's body was temporarily placed in the Royal Vault of Windsor, beneath the Albert Memorial Chapel. It rested there for many years, awaiting the passing of Queen Alexandra, which occurred 15 years later. In 1919, Queen Alexandra ordered the creation of a monument in the south aisle of the chapel. This monument featured a white marble tomb effigy of both the king and queen, mounted on a black and green marble sarcophagus. After Queen Alexandra's passing, King Edward VII's body, along with his wife, was interred inside the tomb. This happened 17 years after Edward VII's death. The caskets had initially been placed in front of the altar in the Albert Memorial Chapel, and notably the monument also depicts Edward VII's beloved dog, Caesar. Before ascending to the throne, Edward VII held the record for being the longest-serving heir apparent in British history. He is considered the first truly constitutional British sovereign and the last to wield significant political power. He is often seen as a peacemaker, but he did have concerns about his nephew, Kaiser Wilhelm II, who within 4 years of Edward VII's death would witness the outbreak of the First World War. Edward VII was known for his natural abilities, combining dignity and charm. He possessed an excellent memory and exceptional tact in handling people. His knowledge, though unsystematic, was acquired firsthand through conversations with various individuals. His tastes were decidedly English. At the age of 68, King Edward VII passed away within Buckingham Palace, the very place of his birth. Thank you for watching. Please show your support by subscribing to Past People.